Hi y'all! Today we are going to be making pasta 3 different ways. Again, my name is Miss Jenny and I'm with the Southern Food and Beverage Museum here in New Orleans, and we are cooking from home today. So we're going to do pasta 3 different ways. One of those ways is going to be doing it by hand. This is particularly easier for your younger kids. It's a lot more hands-on, and honestly, once you get them into a rhythm, they're just going to be doing it for a long time because it takes a while to make enough. I have a pound of pasta that I made yesterday. You can see this is from it sitting in the refrigerator, but notice this yellow color. It's no longer like a pale white yellow. It's now all into the same kind of tan. I'm going to unwrap it out of the tin foil, or the saran wrap, and it should look a little shiny, kind of like that. And I'm going to start by taking off a pinch. You want it to be, we're making a ricchiette right now. So this is the hand pasta, and ricchiette in Italian means little ears, tiny ears. So we're doing it by hand, not by machine. You're going to take a small ball about the size of a small marble or a large pea, smaller than a grape, about this size. Then you're going to smush it around your thumb like this. So it basically makes a hat for your thumb. Now, this honestly is good enough. You can peel it off. You want it to be pretty thin. You can see how thin that is right there. You take it off. This already has the curve and indent. You can do it this way. You can also pinch the sides if you want to, and then fold them back against itself and pinch it for a deeper bowl. Notice how I pinched? I'm going to push it against itself, the shell, and then pinch it together so it's flatter. And now you have this curved ricchiette. Little there. Now we're going to be doing our second way of pasta, and that is going to be rolling it out with a rolling pin. I have a cutting board right here. I have a bag of flour. I'm going to sprinkle a tiny bit down just so it doesn't stick, because again, after being in the fridge, it is a bit sticky. I'm also going to take my rolling pin here, and with my hand over the cutting board, I'm going to coat it lightly with flour so it doesn't stick. You can also use 2 pieces of parchment paper, kind of like when we were rolling out pizza dough, and you can make sure you put some flour underneath, but it won't stick. So I have a tiny piece right here, and I always start in the middle, and I am going to roll it thin. It's already sticking to my rolling pin, so I'm going to peel it off. Since it's a little sticky, I'm going to flip it back onto the floured surface, and I'm going to start by going in the middle and pushing out. Pushing out. I want it to be pretty darn thin. Oh, it's a little sticky. Turn it around again into the flour, and I'm going to push it out in the middle, start pushing it out. A lot of times we think with rolling pins, you start from the bottom and go up. But you always want to do a little bit of work this way and then that way. We're relatively thin right now. As you can see, it's a little bit concentrated on the edges, so I'm just going to take my rolling pin and smoosh it like this. And then what I'm going to do with my dough, I'm going to lay it flat, and I'm going to take a knife and just cut thin strips, and this is going to give you more of a fettuccine. It's pretty hard to do anything smaller than that, but you can do pretty well with the fettuccine, and then you just do, or linguine, and you just do thin strips all the way down. All right, so the third way of doing pasta is if you have this here pasta machine. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you actually have this at your house. It's been given down to you or passed down. It's not something that we use all the time, and honestly, these are pretty expensive. These cost anywhere from about $75 to $90. So, I mean, unless you're looking to be eating pasta nonstop, I wouldn't necessarily invest in it, but we have a lot of pasta classes at the museum, and so I nabbed this one and brought it home with me. What you're going to do is you need the pasta machine itself, And then you'll see underneath here, it connects to the bottom of the table. And so that attaches it so it's nice and sturdy. It also comes with a handle, and that's going to be going in on the side. You can switch the handle. Most pasta makers come with 3 settings in it, and one is the flattener, the other is one for fettuccine, and the other is one for angel hair or spaghetti pasta. You also, if you don't have one already, want a new paintbrush. It can be any size, but you're gonna need to be dusting this pasta machine with flour almost the entire time, anytime you put it through here. So I'm gonna get it all dusted, and we need to flatten it first. I'm gonna take a wedge of dough about this size. It's all right if my flour hands get on it because honestly, it's very sticky. So I might even just paint a little bit on here ahead of time. All right, you want it on your largest setting. Over here, there is a knob and you pull it out and then push it to the size you want. I want it on 1. Some of yours might have 0. The biggest thing you don't ever want to get this machine wet because it will break. I know from personal experience. So you take your wedge and you kind of pinch it at the end so that you can fill it in. I'm going to start cranking, and then I'm using my hand I just fed it through to catch it on the bottom like this. All right, so this is a start. We got a lot more to go. Now you're going to fold it into thirds like this. Pinch it on one side. Redust your pasta maker. And crank it out again, making sure you're catching it. Sometimes for our younger ones, we put them in pairs so they can do this together. All right, so it's getting flatter. Now we're going to do it again. This time I'm going to pinch it at the bottom right here. You want to switch sides that you're doing it. That way it evens out the whole of it instead of it just being the same. I'm going to do it one more time on 0, or I guess on my machine it's 1. All right, you're starting to see that it's also changing colors. It's becoming almost more leathery and tan. Now I'm going to move it to a 2. I'm going to redust my machine, and I'm still going to fold it over like this into thirds. I'm going to squeeze the end. This can take some big effort. If you get tears in it, that's because it either doesn't have enough flour or the chunk of pasta is too big. Luckily, we're doing good so far. You can see right here, there's a little bit of a line, but it's starting to get more smooth. Now I'm going to fold it in half, not in thirds. I'm going to push it on through. Okay. Now moving on to 3, I pull out my knob and twist it. Make sure there's enough flour on here. There we go. And I'm going to roll it through once. And then I'm going to, you can see it's getting longer, fold it into thirds again. A little bit more flour on here. And really crank this. All right. So we're getting somewhere. It's getting lighter. It's getting smoother. You can still see the seam from where it's folded over. All right. I'm going to move it on to a 4. Dust it. And I'm just going to put it straight through. Now I'm going to do a 5. And it's just going to go straight through. It's getting smaller and smaller as we go through. The thinness is getting smaller, but it's getting longer and longer. I could almost make this into a hat. All right, now I'm going to pull and go to a 6. Do a little redusting because it's still pretty malleable or squishy. And this is where you really need a friend to catch because this is going to get very, very long. Whoa! Look at this pasta. This is crazy. Look at that, right? It's also incredibly thin, as you can see. We could roll this through the spaghetti part right now, but I'm going to try and push it into a 7 because a lot of times with spaghetti, since the grooves are so small, you want to make sure that the pasta itself is also small enough. All right. Eventually, it's going to start waving at the bottom, but eventually it's not going to need me to hold it anymore, and it just kind of cranks on its own as I hold it. You know, I watch a lot of Great British Baking Show, and one of the contestants used a pasta machine to make phyllo pastry, which I thought was really smart. So that tiny little chunk we had is now incredibly long and incredibly thin. Now, I know this is disappointing, but I'm actually going to tear it in half because it's going to be easier for me to manage in the spaghetti side. You'd usually do this with a knife, but I'm a rebel. I'm just going to tear it. It is so thin. All right, I'm going to put one over here and then my other over here. Now be careful because it is a little tacky, so you don't want to fold it up all together too much because you want to make sure that it'll be, it doesn't stick too. All right, now I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to put a little bit of flour in here. It's so thin I can see my hand through it, which is crazy. All right, I'm going to dip it in here. Make sure that it catches. It's going to start to move on its own, and I'm going to use that hand I was feeding it with to catch all of the spaghetti strands. All right. Normally what I have at work is I have a plastic tree that lets it dry and you just hang it on there. I didn't bring it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, because it's draped on our hand, curve it around like this loosely, and then put it in our hand, and we're going to make a little nest. So I'm going to put this over on my baking sheet, but you can see right here, got lovely little spaghetti. Thanks so much for joining us, you guys. The recipe is in the link below. We also have some fun activities that are going to be easy to pair for things like pasta, and a little bit of a check for understanding. For those of you who are using it for educational purposes, you're going to be able to kind of add that to the feature as well. So however you make spaghetti, however you make pasta in general, none of it's wrong, and it all tastes pretty darn amazing. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always email me at Jennie, Jennie, @southernfood.org. And thank you so much for joining me in my makeshift kitchen.